So many business owners find themselves trapped in what I call the hamster wheel of survival, running faster and faster just to keep up, working harder, but not necessarily getting ahead. And they're feeling busy, but they're not feeling fulfilled. You all know the feeling. You're putting in the hours, you're managing the day to day, but at the end of each week, you wonder what you're actually moving towards, or if you're moving forward at all. You're managing the day to day, but at the end of each week, you just wonder what is happening. The truth is, there's a big difference between surviving and thriving, and getting off that hamster wheel, is what I call it, requires intentional shifts in how we think about and approach our growth. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with MJ Stock, who is a small business owner, a mindset coach, and a competitive athlete. I can't wait to talk about that. Dedicated to living a purposeful, faith-guided life. She founded All Athletes Women's Gym, or All Athletes Welcome Gym, in 2019, and is soon expanding, launching other adventures. We're going to explore how to break free from the survival mindset and create a more sustainable growth that actually moves you forward. Welcome, MJ.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And athlete, when we say athlete, what kind of athlete were you, are you?
I love that question because I feel like now I've really developed into so many different types of athletic disciplines. But I started when I was really young. So when I was maybe 7 or 8, my dad got me into training for triathlons. So, of course, even before that, I kind of was just a kid in gymnastics. But growing up, I really asked my dad, like, please push me hard. He was in the military. I wanted to train like I was in the military. So he just kind of got me into this path of competing and like learning the ropes and what it means and the mindset. And when you come in second, when you come in last, when you get first place. So kind of that started at a young age. And then I basically did every sport you could think of. Then when I was kind of a little bit older, I really got into the CrossFit world. So I was kind of a competitive CrossFit athlete, got into the coaching realm, kind of ran the gamut there, and then got out of that to get into more of the powerlifting realm. Also sort of just went down that path really hard. Yeah. I had like a couple numbers, big goals I wanted to hit. And then for me, once I checked that off, I really started to go into other disciplines. So I've I would say I've competed in so many things. So after powerlifting, I went into endurance running, and then I went into endurance horse racing, and then those two sort of got blended together. And after that, I really got into competing with team roping and now breakaway roping. So kind of more in the rodeo realm. So dabbled in just
Okay.
yeah.
Wow, that is very cool. And you also coach business owners on mindset, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. And I want to start by painting the picture. How do you realize that whether, it's just individually or it's as a business, that you're on that hamster wheel where you're just surviving, you're just getting through the days versus actually growing and thriving? How do you know that? How do you feel that?
So I think when it comes to dysregulation, essentially, when you don't feel like you're in control or when you're doing what you set out to do and you're sort of just like in chaos, I really believe it feels like disruption of your peace. But also, of course, some of the obvious things that people struggle with is the anxiety, the depression, habits that, negatively affect them, like over or under eating, like alcohol consumption, or even like doom scrolling on your phone. So just these habits that a lot of us, we don't necessarily talk about them, but if, behind closed doors, we would recognize them in ourselves, as just unhealthy. And so I think if that perpetuates, a lot of that can lead to hormonal disruption and, adrenal disruption. So then it becomes, physiological, and that can start affecting your mentality and your mood, and maybe your friends and family don't want to be around you as much anymore. So it kind of spirals, and then all of a sudden you just feel all these areas of your life have sort of erupted into chaos.
Hmm. So I'm curious, was there a moment in your life that really made you stand up and pay attention to this, and where you realized, I'm not really working as fast towards what I wanted to, or I'm not reaching the goals that I wanted to in my timeline, that kind of thing? What was your indicator?
This is an interesting question because for me, it was a little bit of the opposite, where instead of me taking a step back from my goals, a lot of it was I caught myself in just this high achiever mode where it was too much, too overwhelming. Like I would just work like a dog day and night, and,
Hmm.
didn't have much balance in life. And so I really started to watch these heavy ups and downs. And of course, I really believe in, if you're going to achieve something or work towards something, those intentional, really strong blocks of hard work are important. But I think when
Hmm.
it's a little bit more chaotic is when you don't plan the ups and you don't plan the downs. So you're just kind of going through that process of working until you can't anymore. And then whether it's your body, your mind, your health and wellness, it crashes you. So I've just, over the
Hmm.
years, when I got into my business, I was really young. So I didn't quite have a handle on, okay, I have all this energy that I can give to this, but oh my gosh, it's just really wearing me down. And so I'd catch myself on these patterns.
So there's one thing of, you're working towards a goal, like you said, and you're just putting in the hours and pounding it out and getting to your goal. How do you distinguish between that, which is being productive, and then doing things, that the activities that are not going to make you productive, but it's busy work? You feel like, you're wearing that busy badge. Oh, I'm so busy, but it's not getting you anywhere. How do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah. I think someone would probably say the obvious answer would be, um, what is bringing the money in? But I kind of go back and forth with this question because, again, when I first started my business at a young age, I didn't really know the difference between, what was going to work and what
Hmm.
I was doing. So there was so much that I did that was a waste of time and essentially, would look as like failure. But at the time, also, I didn't realize what was actually going to make the money. So you really
Hmm.
do sometimes have to do something. Sometimes you don't know if it's the right thing.
Hmm.
So you also have to gauge, okay, am I doing this because I'm using it as a vice to get out of other things? Am I busying my work because I don't want to make that phone call? Am I doing busy work because
Hmm.
I have this long list of things that I actually need to do that's hard? So I think really
Right.
auditing between the hard stuff that is going to bring the money into your business and have like a tangible outcome, and then also
Hmm.
trying things, but doing it maybe with a timeline or a sense of intention versus like, this is what I have to do. And, I'm wasting 4 hours doing it, but it's not really paying off. And I don't really know what I'm doing. So just kind
Right.
of being intentional.
I'm actually, this is kind of funny. I'm having a thought in my head about this. It's kind of like, as a first time parent, when you have your first child, we're so naive. We have no idea what what lies ahead for us. So
Totally.
we're like, well, we're just going to do it. It's very much like being a first time entrepreneur.
Yeah,
You don't really know what lies ahead, so we're very naive to that path.
absolutely.
So we
Absolutely.
just do what we think is right.
Yes. And of course, that's where mentorship comes into play, where, of course, if you can bounce something off of people, get a mentor. But the reality is, there is especially when you're first starting out, a lot of people don't know who to go to. They don't know what to even ask. They don't know, even
Right.
they don't have a path or trajectory that they're on. So, I think a big part of that is understanding your vision as a whole, even though you may not know
Mm-hmm.
how to get there, it's going to give you a trajectory, which I think is huge. But at least you can kind of fill in the space and then you're working towards something, but maybe with a goal in mind that you can talk to somebody about.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the plus side of having the mentor, because that mentor has been through it and they can see what lies ahead. Because another question that I was curious about is how do you actually, put pen to paper and evaluate each of the things that you're doing, like a almost like a time audit of what you're doing
Mhm.
to make sure that the things that you're doing are aligned with your goal and are going to be ones that move you forward? Or, do you ever do something like that?
Yeah, I think with some of my habits, I try to get everything out of my head and onto paper. So I really think just sort of
Hmm.
laying everything out, whether you think it's going to be worth it or not. And then just even the big stuff, the small stuff, getting it down. And then really, a big part of it is I try to create timelines. So if there's something that I feel would be beneficial in my business, I really try to create a timeline as to when I can fit that in. So if it's this monster project that I have to take on, you know, I really think about, okay, do I have the ability right now to do that, and how much money will be generated from that? So a lot of times
Hmm.
we do things that don't really bring a return, or even if it's not a monetary gain, if I'm not making connections or networking with people. So you kind of get stuck in these loops of doing things that only really you know that you're doing, and really only you know that you're doing in the business. So just something that
Hmm.
you can, whether it's an internal fix or an external, just something that's going to tangibly be, obvious to notice, and just see when you can fit that in on the timeline. Because if you're so busy, maybe do some small things, and
Right.
kind of fill the space with that, and then really prioritize when you can do those bigger chunks. So I think I think really prioritizing timelines as far as the calendar and your schedule goes, because so often we get caught up in this day-to-day process and we're not looking at those bigger things, nor are we doing some of these smaller projects that could really benefit us.
As we're sitting here having this conversation, I'm thinking, well, there's also the idea of fear. Do you think that any part of this lends itself to being someone being fearful or being comfortable, perhaps, if you look at it the other way, being comfortable in, okay, I'm doing these tasks because I know how to do these well and it doesn't require a lot of extra from me, or
Mhm.
I'm fearful of success because sometimes people have that. I can't remember the name of the book, but there was a book and an author that wrote about the fact that once you start seeing success, your temperature starts rising,
Mhm.
proverbial temperature starts rising. And then you go, oh my gosh, this is not comfortable. This is not comfortable. And then you cool yourself down and bring yourself back because that was uncomfortable. Is there any part of that that you think plays a role here?
Yeah, of course. And I know what you're referring to. And, essentially that's just self-sabotage in a way, just a different word
Mm-hmm.
to put on that, because a lot of people don't want to feel that they are holding themselves back or self-sabotaging themselves. So, they do these things that sort of quietly do that. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it kind of goes back into my, athletic competitive nature, where, if you're doing something competitive, you're holding yourself to a standard or an outcome or a goal. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that people that struggle with fear or self sabotage, you know, may be afraid of the goals that they've put out there. And so I think a lot of it, if you can put yourself into more of those situations where you shoot for something, you try something, you get positive feedback from it, I think the better you are going to be across the board. So that's kind of what I do with competition, where I do something where I'm like, gosh, this is a big, big thing to accomplish. And you sort of have to convince
Uh-huh.
yourself that you're capable of doing that. So that's kind of how I use
Mm-hmm.
the competitive nature for me to build trust in myself. Because I think what it comes back down to is people don't trust in themselves that they can actually do what they've set out to do. So, in business or in competition, if you can give yourself small wins or small goals where you can say, gosh, I was really supposed to call my accountant today, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I know they were going to tell me something bad. If you could think of that, like, oh no, right.
Well,
So, yes, yes. So, like little stuff like that, where it's a mental block. But if you can start to kind of
mm-hmm.
look at it like maybe a little mental goal, mental competition with yourself, mental achievement of, I have to do this. I've set this out that I have to do this. And doing
Mm-hmm.
whatever it takes, whatever your training requires to get you to do that, even something as stupid and simple as making a phone call, or as something as grandiose as entering into a fitness competition. There's little tangible steps that you have to reach along the timeline to then have that goal and really rise to the occasion. So I think when people set goals, it's the pressure that they feel that they're actually going to have to hold themselves accountable and the self discipline that
Right.
it takes to get there.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. So I'm going to ask for one step. Once you recognize that you're on that hamster wheel and you just keep going and going, what do you think the number one first step is that you should do?
This is a toss up because I want to say so many different things. I really strongly believe that when we're dysregulated in our system and at life and the world is chaotic and we just can't seem to get a grip, I
Mm-hmm.
really think that we should prioritize health and wellness. And what I mean by that, especially, is nutrition. So often we're misguided as to what people think, feel, and believe is healthy. So we're over consuming caffeine. We're, stimulated on energy drinks. We're under eating. Everybody's trying to lose weight. So nobody's eating anything, so all of those things are going to disrupt what's happening inside, which essentially the internal will affect the external. So I think if you're heavily dysregulated, how much water have you been drinking? You know, do
Oh,
do
don't ask me that
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's a common thing, and the reality is when we become dysregulated or feel like our world is chaotic, the main things that go are the main things that are going to keep us stable and alive, essentially.
one.
But, eating and drinking water, deprioritizing alcohol as a vice, just
Mm-hmm.
basic movement, things of that nature. But I really think a lot of it can stem from, just supporting your mind and body with the nutritional side of things.
So there's a lot of talk about how you should be working on your business, not in your business, right? And we've all been to seminars or read books on it or taken classes on it, whatever. But how do you make that transition when you're already stretched thin and when you already feel like everything seems urgent to be able to prioritize that above everything else? I know it was kind of two questions in one.
Sure. You know, I don't want to give bad advice, but the reality is that everything seems urgent, but truly, like, everything is not urgent. And that's easier said than done, of course, especially when you're in the chaos. But And, in my life recently, we've been really experiencing this. So it's given me an opportunity to really focus in on my mindset, because when something happens to you or your family, you realize, gosh, everything that I'm working on, it's it's not that urgent. So things in your life and priorities and values, core values that you have, will prioritize themselves. It's the classic example of, not putting your family first. So they'll always be banging on your door, trying to get your attention. Same thing with, health and wellness and nutrition. Like, there's going to be core values in your life that will prioritize themselves. So just remembering the balance between work and business and your goals and what you've set out to do, and the things that really truly matter to you, your core values, because there has to be balance
Mm-hmm.
there. Because if not, naturally, we're going to gravitate most likely to the things that make money, most likely to the things that are going to serve our selfish nature and selfish desire, which is fine as long as there's good quality balance. So I would say that's the thing there is everything seems urgent, but it is not. So just really trying to meditate on
Mm-hmm.
that and giving yourself balance. Easier said than done, of course. So,
It
outside
is.
of
It
that,
is.
working in versus working on the business, I really like to work seasonally because of that balance. So, people, when I first started doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll kind of explain to you what I mean by that, but when I first started kind of this little ebb and flow being in or out or working on my business, people would kind of judge me for that because it's not normal to do, to say, all right, you guys, everything's functioning fine, but it's, maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's not great, but I'm going to take a step out or start to work on some of the back end stuff to hopefully, improve when I am in my business. So a lot of times what I'll do
Mm-hmm.
when I work seasonally is, for every business, I feel there's natural ebbs and flows throughout the year. So if you can capitalize on those ebbs and flows, like if business is booming and I feel like I really want to be a part of that, I'm going to step in my business. I'm going to be talking to people. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be networking. I'm going to be making those relationships. I'm going to be checking on everything. If business is slow for me, I'll be like, okay, well, this is natural.
Yeah.
There's maybe I've done everything I can do. And so, since it's slow, I'm going to take that as a time to step out and maybe work on the business so that when things are crazy and busy and fun and enjoyable and everything's flowing, that I can kind of see, all of the what I've done on the back end. So, just trying
Mm-hmm.
to really improve systems, things like that throughout the year so that you can be in versus working on or working out of the business. Because again, with the
Mm-hmm.
balance and, prioritizing family, um, really having those seasons, whether it's a week or a month where you're just like, okay, guys, I'll see you later. Good luck. And really that's
Right.
a great strategy to audit your business because, you can see who is reliant on you, what's going to go wrong, why are these things reliant on me, and then that's going to help you
Mm-hmm.
when you do work on the business. You can put those systemizations in place, strategies in place, SOPs in place of, hey, when I'm on vacation for a month, what the heck is going to go wrong?
And I love this idea because I think you're the first entrepreneur that I've heard talk about working seasonally in your business. That's a great concept because there's always a season or a reason, right?
Totally.
And you can have that in your business. It's
Absolutely.
taking a sabbatical for a little bit from your business.
You
And
bet.
this kind of goes into my next question, which is about delegation. Where does delegation, and you kind of already touched on this, but where does delegation fall in this whole realm?
That's interesting because it depends on if your business is just you and you're the main person doing the work, making
Mm-hmm.
the money. So that's a lot of pressure on you. And you know, it's very easy for business owners to say, I'm the one that can do it the best. I'm the one that can make the most money. I'm the one that knows exactly what's going on. No one else sees the vision the way I do. So it's very easy to just give yourself all that load. And then later on, we're like, gosh, I'm so busy. I have so much going on. And it's like, you gave it to yourself. So when you're the
Oof.
only one, I really think that that's when you are going to look at how can I systemize or automate my business. So using these things, we have so much technology these days. And I remember a time when I did not have my business more automated. So I was picking up the phone all the time, texting like, "Oh, hang on, guys, I gotta
Mhm.
quick do this," because I thought that if it was automated, people were not going to like that. The reality is so many people like the automation. Majority of people don't want to jump on the phone with somebody, have a quick chat, and then go on with their lives. A lot of people now in the age of tech, they just want to log on and maybe meet up
Mhm.
sometime in person. But so if you're the only person doing the work, I would try to automate things. But in my case, what I feel blessed with is that I have brought people into my space. So with my gym, we have personal trainers that work under the roof. So with all those people, I really have believe in them and trust them. And so a lot of
Mhm.
times, let's say I'm in the hamster wheel or I'm chaotic, I'll reach out and I'll say, hey guys, this is how I'm feeling. Who's willing to rise to the occasion, or what are you guys capable of doing? And some people will, raise their hand and say, well, I'll take on these three things, and I felt burdened by even saying like, oh, can somebody help me out? So it's a lot of people will rise to the occasion if you just kind of give them insight as to what's going on, how you're thinking or feeling. But a part of that also means including them in the vision and the grand master plan, because so many people they'll buy in to your vision and you'll see them rise to the occasion. So I think really
Mhm.
bringing people into what you're trying to do versus trying to do it all by yourself.
I think that's great. So, what does business and what does life look like on the other side of the hamster wheel? I know everybody wants to know.
I think this is great because I think it is so much less selfish. And I know saying that a lot of people will think,
Mhm.
well, I'm running a business and I'm making money, so I'm not being selfish because with the money I'm making, I'm supporting my family. I'm dogging it out, but there's food on the table, my family's happy, things like that. Although I think when you're in a state of chaos in the hamster wheel, you are so in your own bubble. So if someone comes over and says,
Mhm.
hey, MJ, I need you. I need you to show up in my life today. We are so much less likely to do that if we're just like drowning ourselves, right? So I think
Right.
it's so healthy to want to get out of the hamster wheel so that you can have more time to be of service to others. You can be there
Mhm.
when someone knocks on your door, because if someone's in need and you're going through it yourself, you're going to say, "Oh, I'm way too slammed. I'm sorry, I can't help right now." So, I think
Tapped
that's
out.
really important. Yes, yes. And I think figuring
Mhm.
out a why, like what is your goal to get out of the hamster wheel, right? What
Mhm.
outside of yourself, outside of having freedom, what can you do with that spare time? So, having hobbies, maybe you're going to church more, maybe you're being of service to your neighbor more, maybe you're reading more,
Mhm.
doing these things that, in life you want to experience. So I think it becomes more experiential versus reactive, situational. I'm stuck in this world that I'm just kind of going day by day. And instead, you're maybe more planning to kind of live life.
Right. Mm-hmm. So as we start to wrap up, if someone is listening to this and they are feeling like they're completely trapped on that hamster wheel, what would be your one piece of advice to them?
I would say probably years ago, I my advice would be so much different. I probably have advice that was like tangible, that really logically made sense. But for me, as I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
older and as I've gotten off of the hamster wheel and really recognized what has actually worked for me when I was on the hamster wheel, my advice would be to pray. And I don't pray in a traditional way where, I say a 10-second prayer and I go on with my day and just forget that there's a greater plan and everything's kind of laid out for me already. So it's so easy to forget
Mm-hmm.
that. So oftentimes what I'll do is have alone time and I'll go on a walk, and what I'll do is I'll just openly, verbally talk. And whether it's me getting, my thoughts out and I'm just talking to myself, or if I'm talking to God, or, whatever your thing is, just going out and getting it out of your body and verbalizing what you're afraid of, what you've noticed. Lord, I am doom scrolling like crazy today. Take it away from me. Give me the
Right.
strength, the clarity, the reason, the why to stop doing these things. So I think so
Mm-hmm.
frequently we are stuck in our patterns. We're not even telling ourselves that we're struggling. So if you're going out and you're
Mm-hmm.
going on a walk and you're just letting it all flow out of you, and maybe it's emotional, or maybe you feel silly, or you don't know what to talk about or whatever, just say stuff, and just you'll kind of
Start.
see where it takes you. And if that's not your style, and you don't want to walk down the road and talk to yourself, journal or write. So just really kind
Well,
of
that's
bringing that to light.
just to get it out.
Yeah.
We're going to move into the final four portion of our podcast. I love this section because I ask four questions of every guest that is on my show, and I usually get four completely different answers, and I love it. So, first question is, what is your favorite book, and what has made it stick with you?
Oh, so I read a lot, a lot, a lot. So I was kind of like, what book should I pick? A past old good one? And, you know, one actually that just popped into my mind because it's so perfect for this podcast, I feel like. And one that I would read it 5 times over is, it's called Dream to Destiny, and it's by Robert Morris. And it's a faith-based book, but it's so special because it was gifted to me. So someone
Mm-hmm.
that I love and trust said, "Hey, I think this would be a good fit for your pursuits and your goals and the type of person that you are and what you have in your life." So for months I packed this book around, never read it, didn't I was on the hamster wheel essentially at that time. And I thought, why would I read this book that it's about your vision and it's about your dream and it's about, I'm like, I'm working on my dream, I'm working on my goals. But that book really laid it out for me as like a step by step. This is what you ought to prioritize if you're going to live faith
Mm-hmm.
oriented and just prioritize your faith. And then that compounds and will grow and develop your vision. So I really enjoyed that book because it really helped me rework my mind to where I got a sense of peace and clarity and just finally like it's not in my hands.
Mm-hmm. Love it. I love it. Do you have a favorite quote or piece of advice that you find yourself coming back to time and time again?
So I would say my favorite is it's a Bible verse, and it's Proverbs 16:9. And it says something like a person plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. So frequently, and again, if you're not religious, and I mean that's a great quote if you think about it. Like, whoever you believe in, whatever you believe in, you can figure out these steps on a day to day. You can be in the hamster wheel, but the reality
Mm,
is it's going to go how it goes. I say this all the time where I
right.
plan out tomorrow and I got 16 things on my to-do list, and all of a sudden something goes catastrophically wrong. You can't even do one of those things. So, you wasted hours thinking about
Right.
tomorrow when you could just be in today.
Hmm. It's a great message. It is. What is one habit or practice that has genuinely changed your life?
Genuinely reading. I was not a strong reader growing up. I actually was in, the special class for reading to try to, you know, bring up my reading skills.
And now you love it.
I love it. And so it's so funny because, and I think adults can even relate to this, where it is a forced skill. You have to force it, especially
Hmm.
with technology and this day and age where everything is just, you get the information within like 0.5 seconds, like truly. So I would say
Hmm.
reading has helped just build my stamina, build my patience. It's given me an emotional and mental out. Even if you're reading about what you're trying to do, you're no longer heady and trying to figure it out yourself, but you can get lost in the text and give yourself a break in a healthy way versus you think you're giving yourself a break by just being on social media and all that stuff.
Right. We're not. Surprise.
Right. Yes, you feel worse
And if
after.
you could have dinner with anyone, right? If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be and why?
My grandparents. So my grandma and grandpa have passed away. But now, as I've grown older, I have realized the importance of talking with older generations and really just not being a
Hmm.
know-it-all and just kind of sitting with people and learning about them, and especially with your family, because families are so separated now that we don't really even get to know our
Hmm.
grandparents. Oftentimes, we're separated from our parents, whether that's a personal choice or just we're living cross country or something's happened, or. So I really would say I would love now, as more of an adult, to be able to sit with my grandparents and learn them and know them and try to ask them questions
Hmm.
and get advice. So, if anything, I would say the goal there, with if I could have dinner with them, would be, getting to know your family more deep, and not being surface level, because so frequently we just know people for, you know, what we see versus really talking with them and getting to know your family and your loved ones.
That is very true. You have shared some wonderful advice with our listeners today, MJ. I am so thankful that you were able to join us. If our listeners want to learn more from you, how do they get in touch with you?
I would say right now the best way would be on Instagram, which is my handle is MJ Stock Official, or through my website, which has a informational form, allathleteswelcome.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, MJ.
Thank you, Jennifer. I really
And thank you to my audience.